Hi, everybody. If you do not mind, if you could please scoot in towards the middle of the row, it makes it a lot easier for people who are coming in post-lunch a little late to find a spot. Get cozy with your neighbor. Everybody's great here. Hopefully you all enjoyed lunch. Awesome, thank you. And please also put your phones on silent so it does not distract the speaker. But thank you for showing up. This is the build track. For people who have not been here yet today, my name's Justine. I'm the MC. If you want to hang out with me all day long, stay in this room. So up next, we have Matt Shelton from Nuance Communications, who's actually been with them since 2005, working across technical support for enterprise healthcare platforms. And Nuance Communications actually just switched from Subversion to Git. So Matt is going to talk to you a bit about how they chose a Git branching model and what they went through with this process. So without further ado, Matt.
Thank you. Can we put this away? Sorry. Hi. That was loud. Wow, great. Thank you. All right. Thanks, Justine, for the intro. So I'm an engineering manager at Nuance Communications, and we're all about reinventing the relationship between people and technology. And in our healthcare division, we are focused on improving clinical documentation, helping doctors create better documents, deliver better patient care, and helping healthcare institutions achieve greater financial integrity and compliance. My team builds a platform of web services to offer natural language processing technologies to other healthcare software vendors. So we're primarily a business-to-business sort of arrangement. And like I said, our primary delivery are web services and a reliable SDK that our consumers, some of whom are also Atlassian customers, can use to deliver solutions to hospitals. So my team's roughly about a dozen people, 2 different parts of the world. And we recently moved from Subversion to Git. So I want to talk about that process, why we did it, why we picked Git, how we picked a branching model, and some of the problems we ran into. So before I get started, how many people here are in a software engineering role where you have to worry about dependency management in some technology that you're using? Awesome. How many of you love Maven as much as I do? Awesome. Great. You picked the right session, I hope. So I want to talk about my team's migration to Git from Subversion and why we picked it. So NICOLA PAOLUCCI, he's a developer advocate here at Atlassian, conference a few months ago had this quote, which I really appreciated. And it says, for those of you who are having a hard time reading, it says, if you don't like speed, being productive, and more reliable coding practices, then you shouldn't use Git. A little tongue-in-cheek, but it really hit home for me because my team really values productivity. We really value speed and being able to deliver solutions to our customers and our partners as quickly as possible. We value being productive. We value reliable coding practices and a low defect rate. And so we wanted to switch from a situation where we were asking ourselves questions that we shouldn't still be asking ourselves after being around for half of a decade. Things like, I have this code over here, but I need to release this thing, but it's not ready, so I got to pull it out, release it, push it back in. Or maybe we should make a branch. What's a branch? I'm not really comfortable with that idea. And how will we merge it at the end? Or we have this external dependency, and it's 2 different versions across 3 of our vertical products, and we need to do feature development in all of them, and oh, this one needs to get upgraded. It was ridiculous. We spent a ton of time, we wasted a ton of time in these sorts of conversations. So we wanted to make a change. So in evaluating this migration, we wanted 3 things out of it. The first was we wanted to be able to isolate our development so the developers could have free space, free reign over what they were building, and have the ability to create and not worry about impacting our release plans or what QA was testing, except when they wanted QA to test. We wanted automation. We didn't want them to have to do anything manually if they didn't have to. And we wanted deep integration with the Atlassian toolset. We use pretty much everything that Atlassian provides. We have Jira Server, Confluence, Bitbucket Server, Bamboo, HipChat, Fisheye Crucible, Clover. Actually, I think that is everything that Atlassian makes. So we wanted deep integration with the whole stack. And we wanted to be able to use it as seamlessly as possible. Also, like I said, I'm an engineering manager, so I wanted my team to be happy. That's a big metric for me. So when we started to look at Git, we needed to evaluate what branching model we were going to use. And if you're not familiar with the term of a branching model, here's what it means. So in Git, branching is cheap, it's easy, and it's really painless. And merging, which is never really easy anywhere, is a little bit easier in Git than it is in some other source control systems. It's very powerful. And when looking at how we wanted to make use of the branching concepts and capabilities in Git, we asked ourselves a few questions. We asked ourselves how distributed we were or were going to be. Because when we started this process, we had one team on the East Coast of the US of about 6 engineers. And today we have a team, that same team, and a brand new team of the same size in India. And we knew they were coming. So we needed to make sure that what we were going to do was going to fit that model. We also thought about how often we release, or how often we wanted to be able to release. And we needed to make sure that anything we picked was going to empower that idea. We thought about, do we like our existing methodology, or do we want to do something different? And if you have a methodology that works, is there a way to take the capabilities that Git provides in terms of painless branching and apply that to that methodology to empower your team? So a branching model is how you make use of branching to be effective with Git for source control. If this is new to you, let me run through a few branching models. The first one is very simple. There are no branches. You have a master. Everybody works in master, one commit after another. You release from master, you test from master. Your team breaks things in master, one branch. This is good if all you want to do is get used to the commands, but maybe you need something a little more complicated. Maybe you need just some simple feature branching, where a developer can create a branch for doing their feature work, build, test, break, fix, and then have that code either pulled or pushed into master when it's ready to go out. This is a great way for teams who are getting used to branching concepts to get started, and it's really great for teams who have very strict processes around code review, around how the code is merged, to just introduce this first to get used to the idea. Let's say you are a continuous delivery shop. There's a branching model for you. It looks kind of like this. You have a release stream of what's in production. You have a staging branch for what's next to go into production. This is where all the testing, your performance testing, all of your QA processes are taking place, and feature branches off of staging. Generally, you would apply some sort of continuous delivery model at the end to get what's in release to your customers and what's in staging to some sort of testing infrastructure. Or maybe you have a problem like what we have, where we have the need to have long-running versions in production, and we need to fix things in old versions and new versions. You might need a model like this, where you have a master branch and feature branching for your feature work, and long-running branches for releases that are in the field. Bug fix branches for fixing bugs, and you might use some sort of merge process to merge those changes back up all the way through your old releases and into master to ensure that master always has the latest code. This is actually the branching model that the Bitbucket server team uses. And if you want to take a look at how they use it, there's a great site there. We looked at this. We considered this for a long time. And in the end, we found that though it was going to cover most of our use cases, it wasn't quite what the team needed. So what do we pick? I'll answer that in a minute. When you are trying to figure out what branching model to use and even how to use Git, I really want to encourage you to not make this decision in a vacuum. There are a lot of great resources out there. Atlassian has a fantastic Git microsite at atlassian.com/git. I didn't think I could fit everything into this 30-minute presentation, so we wrote a 3-part blog series. It's at atlassian.com/git/articles. So if you want some more information and I'm not able to answer your question later, take a look there, and I'd be happy to help out later as well. There was a presentation 2 years ago at Summit 2013 that goes into some of the workflows as well. And one other link that I will speak that's not on screen, Atlassian recently published a continuous delivery microsite at atlassian.com/continuous-delivery. And it is a fantastic treasure trove of knowledge about how to make use of branching models and other technologies together that Atlassian provides to empower a continuous delivery workflow. So check those out. So we picked git-flow. Hey, that advanced for me. How nice. All right, let's go back one slide. So we chose Git-flow. Git-flow is introduced by Vincent Dreesen in a blog post, and there's a short link to that if you want to take a look at it at some point. He also wrote a set of Git extensions that flow, and it looks like this. We like colors on our team, so we picked something colorful. So Git-flow starts off with a master branch. And all development work happens off of a develop branch that is branched off of master. Master is always clean. There are no releases off of master. Master doesn't really build. It sits there as a record-keeping location for tags. And all of your development work happens off of master. It's where all the fun takes place. But if you find a bug with a version that's in production, we have a concept of a hotfix branch. Hotfix is a branch that branches right off of master. Work is done, work is tested, and then when it's ready to go out the door, two things happen. First, it's pushed up to master and tagged to record that that release happened, and then it is pushed down into develop, so that as development progresses, it's always up to date in the develop branch. Features come off of develop. For each feature that's implemented, you branch off of develop, and you continuously fetch new updates from develop to keep that feature branch up to date. This is where developers get to play. They get to break things. And then when it's ready, it can either be pushed or pulled via pull request into the develop branch. And once your code in develop is ready to go out the door, once you've said, we want to have a release now, you create a release branch from develop. Release doesn't exist until this point. Final testing is done here. You validate this is what we want to put out into the field. And then again, two things happen. Those changes are pushed up into master and tagged. And then any changes that had to take place after release was created are pulled down into develop. This solved about 99% of our concerns in terms of branching in Git. But like I alluded to earlier, we need long-running support branches for versions that are in the field. So we introduced a sixth branch, which is called support. Support differs from hotfix in a couple of ways. First of all, it's yellow. It differs from hotfix for one primary reason, and that is that these are changes that aren't off of the latest version that's in master. These are from previous version. I even illustrated with a minor version back, or a major version back, excuse me, to illustrate that these are old things, but we needed new feature development in those old versions. And these are also changes that are hard to merge. We might have to cherry pick, we might have to hand merge, we might have to not merge at all and re-implement whatever feature we built in support. This is a great question. Why do we need this level of complexity? Well, we have a lot of partners. We work with a lot of other software vendors, and our products don't have a consistent release schedule. So let me give you an example. We have a partner who is working on an integration with us for one product. They have a beta customer in the field. It's an on-premise deployment for that customer, and we're a hosted solution. They're running with one version of our software. That customer says, we will not take this product live unless you do X. So the partner comes back to us and said, we really need X, and we need it on the version you have out here. And we say, well, we have this other version. It's the next one. We'll do it there. No. Your next version has this other thing, and we don't want that. And see, this sounds eerily reminiscent of the problem we had before we were trying to solve. And we didn't want to repeat that. So we needed a way to do feature development on older versions and then choose how to bring those new features into the latest and greatest version that might be going out in the field. The other is that we have a coupled dependency with an internal library for working with our NLP technologies. And as they implement new features, we might not want them in each one of the product offerings that we have. So we need to be able to pick and choose which of those product verticals make use of new versions. So we, again, need to be able to have old versions receive new features. Also, we use Maven for dependency management. Maven is great. Maven's also hard. If you've never heard of Maven, and even if you're not a Java shop, look, this problem applies to non-Java development environments as well. If you're using NPM for Node, you're using NuGet for .NET, whatever you have in place, the need to resolve dependencies that might be external or might be internal is universal across many software engineering environments. But if you've never heard of Maven and you'd like to know what it is, you can look it up. No. Maven is a build automation tool. It is primarily used for Java projects. Its purpose is both to describe how a software project is built and also to describe its dependencies. It has the concept of a build lifecycle with a bunch of stages or goals, and we produce snapshot builds for things that are still in development and then various flavors of release builds as we release. There are other things out there. There's Gradle, there's Ivy, but we've been using Maven for a long time. We're really happy with what it gives us in terms of its feature set, so that's what we're using. And dependencies are a huge challenge for us. So this is what our project structure sort of looks like. We've got a common package for common stuff. And we have 4 major product verticals. And each one of them is very similar to one another, but has a different workflow and a different customer base. And we produce artifacts as a result of the build process that go into a tool called Artifactory Pro for storing both build artifacts produced by Bamboo and also external dependencies. It's great for caching things, like we're using Log4j for logging. We don't want to pull that down from the commons every single time we do a build. It gets persisted on our local network in Artifactory Pro. So when we're doing active product development, we're usually pointing to the snapshot builds, the in-progress builds for common as we are doing product work. If you're trying to take notes, by the way, these are going to get posted within a couple of days, so relax. Because I didn't want you to have to transcribe this slide. All right, so for each one of the branches that we have, that has a slightly different location in Artifactory where we toss builds out of Bamboo. For the branches where we're doing active development, their builds generally go into a snapshot repository, and then when we release to QA, there's a QA repository, so QA has one place to look for everything they've ever tested. And then from the branches that actually release to the field, they go into a staging repository for release candidates, and then into a release repository for the things that we've said can actually go out the door. So what's the big deal? So all of this, though very wonderful for us, and it actually really makes our development process work fantastically much of the time, it runs headfirst into a wall once we start branching for 2 huge reasons. One is that when you produce artifacts via Bamboo and store them in Artifactory with a version number, and you have 2 developers working on the same version in parallel feature branches, you start to have collisions between the artifacts that are produced. And then managing those version numbers during the branching process, changing them on the way in and out of branching, is actually a huge pain. Let me illustrate that for you. Developer A, we're going to call her Amy. Amy does some product work. It is for product A, consistent theme, and it has dependencies in our common project. Before she started working, there was already one artifact in our artifact repository of this version. So she branches for a feature branch and does some work in common and then work in her product build. Everything's green, all of her unit tests pass. She pushes up to Bitbucket Server for her feature work. And Bamboo builds common and creates a new artifact in Artifactory. Unit tests pass, everyone's happy, green, yay. Bill is working on a feature in Project B. I'm very clever with this consistent naming, guys. You're going to love it. All right, so he does the exact same set of steps, produces the exact same named artifact, and I hope at this point it's clear to you what the problem is, because then when Amy realizes she missed one feature in her product project and implements that, and all of her unit tests pass, and she pushes that up to Bitbucket Server, and all of her tests fail, we have a problem, because that's not the common build she thought she had. We also run into a version pollution problem when we try to fix this, because let's say we say, all right, well, we'll start with 2.0 snapshot, and then we'll name it based on the branch, and we'll change it, or maybe we won't change it, and we'll push it back up to develop, and then it's this, and the next developer changes it again, and then it's that, and then it's something else, and somehow we're producing builds with different names in different places, and it gets really messy. But there have to be ways to automate this, right? We're all software developers here. There's got to be some ways to script some stuff, and there are. There are some great techniques out there. We thought about ways to modify this on the branching and merging operations so that, again, our developers could not have to do a whole lot of manual steps. So we'll go ahead and change it when we branch, right after we branch, because you can't change it when you branch. And then we'll change it after we get it merged back into develop. And we can automate this. We can use, there's a Java implementation of git-flow that Atlassian actually builds called git-flow. That does this for us. We can do this with just scripting Maven version set version. That can do this. It has a couple of problems. And it's those two commits, because they're wrong. And they produce artifacts that are from the wrong place. And there's a tiny window of opportunity in there for us to overwrite someone else's build and to produce code from the wrong place. We thought about then just doing this on branch only. And there's a presentation tomorrow, and NICOLA PAOLUCCI is doing a presentation on merge strategies tomorrow. I encourage you to check it out. There's a really interesting merge technique called theirs versus ours, where you pick which version you want to merge and say, this is the actual change. This change is the one that's right. And we figured out that right after we branch, we could merge with develop and say, choose our change. Take ours. And then when we pull the change back up into develop, Git ignores the fact that the version number was different between the two branches. And we have happiness. Developed version never needed to change, and the feature was by itself. But we still have one bad build. And it's still a manual operation, and developers are not happy. We were looking at this the wrong way. We needed to think about ways to actually isolate the build artifacts, because Git wasn't broken, and Maven, though I'd like to blame it for a lot of things, wasn't broken, and my team wasn't broken, but the problem was that we were overwriting builds, so we needed to figure out how to isolate them. And I mentioned we were using Artifactory Pro, and we have this lovely list of places where we're storing artifacts, and the problem was our feature build. So we thought, let's get clever. Let's use a Maven property to put all of our feature builds in a custom repository pattern based on the Git branch. We wrote a Maven plugin that pulls the Git branch out of the branch of the URL for the branch, tosses it into our repository URL, and we were successful. Doesn't that sound simple? I lied. I'm sorry. Nothing is simple, because Maven is hard. Fans. All right, so the developer who was working on our Maven plugin sent me that GIF in HipChat, and I was like, that's going right into the presentation. So it turns out that when you write a plugin for Maven and attach it to the earliest stage in the lifecycle, it can't touch the URLs for your repositories. They've already been set. They're inaccessible. So though we were actually putting in a different repository for features, it wasn't different across features. It was only the one, and we were sad. But it wasn't the end, because Maven actually has this other way of extending its functionality called extensions. And extensions, though horribly, horribly documented, do actually let you modify that repository URL if you can use a combination of reflection and figuring out the right API to use and setting it in memory by writing your own parser to refilter. It's crazy. But it works. So we were able to write an extension that when you are working in a branch, all of your artifacts go into a branch name location Artifactory. You never step on people, and we don't touch the version. The version stays exactly the same between feature branches and develop. I gave this presentation at Nuance, and I got all these hands up that said, we want to do what you're doing, we want your extension. And I said, great, you're all friends, you're all here, I'd love to give it to you. And I would love to say to you today that I would be happy to share that with you, but our legal department never got back to me. So once I find out if I can, I will be happy to publish this so that we can make it more available for other Maven fans out there who want to use git-flow. And if that doesn't happen, I will write a set of instructions to do it yourself, because everyone should be happy together. So at the beginning, I illustrated that we had a problem. We had a problem with Subversion and a problem with the way we wanted to do software development and not being able to do it. So I had to ask myself, after doing all this work, which started 9 months ago, were we successful? Is my team happy now? Because we have this, a very colorful set of lines that illustrates how we do software development and how we do branching. And did this solve all of our problems? Were we successful? So there were some things that came out of this that were awesome, and we love it. And there are some things that came out of it that are a little inefficient, and so I'll talk about both of them. First of all, branches are super, super easy. Remember, we want a deep integration with the tool set, and we get that. We can go into Jira and click on the link that says Create Branch, and we create branches, and we don't have to do anything else except pull and check it out and start working, but we don't have to do anything else to get the branch created. Everybody loves this. Nuance is a technical account manager customer as a part of the enterprise offerings here. And first, a quick shout out to our technical account manager. He's awesome. His name's Javier. He's great. Very helpful in this process. And one of the things that other customers have talked about as a metric is how quickly can you get to writing software from the time you know you need to start. And the time to get to branch creation and start working here is seconds. That's huge for us. It's huge for me as a manager because I want my team to be as productive as possible. And these tools work incredibly well together. You don't have to be using git-flow or a really complicated branch strategy, which I hope none of you implement a really complicated branch strategy, but you don't have to be doing anything fancy to get the benefits out of all these tools working well together. You can see all of your feature builds in one plan in Bamboo. Bamboo can detect those branches and automatically spin up a branch plan for them, so you immediately have continuous integration every time one of your feature branches is created. Our team can still do code reviews in Crucible, which is what we prefer to use for code review. And we can get alerts like crazy in HipChat when every single time we get a feature branch created or it fails. We had to turn some of those off. There were too many of them. And Jira ties all this together in one place. I can look at the development area in Jira for each issue and see all of its branches, all the commits, its code review status. Has it been pulled back in to develop? It's wonderful. We love it. And pull requests, I'm a huge fan of pull requests. I mentioned we spun up an offshore team. They were super eager to get started. And that was good. We wanted them to be eager to get started. But we didn't want them to commit things to develop right away. We wanted them to get used to our infrastructure. And so having a process in place where we could say, no, you can't push your code into develop because you actually haven't finished the design process yet, was very helpful. It's also an excellent gate for developers who are a little click happy, or people who didn't respond to all the comments that came out of code review. And it means that whoever reviewed the code and said, yes, this is ready to go, can then do a sanity check right before it goes back into develop to say, yeah, that's the code I reviewed. We love that feature. There are a couple of things that are slowing us down right now that we're looking at ways of speeding up. So I mentioned our dependencies a while ago, 4 major projects and a common. We have some features that need to go across all products. Sometimes that means we have to do that branching action between 1 and 7 times. If we have some common dependencies in the support branch and some in develop, same for the products. It's a lot of clicking. And the branch name matters because that extension depends on that branch name being the same across each one of the branches in which you're working. So we have to make sure that every time we do one of those branches, it's named properly. So that takes a couple extra seconds. These aren't huge inefficiencies. It's just a matter of seconds. And the last is that Bamboo, because we're using the branch plan concept, when you go to Bamboo, you see a bunch of plans that look like they've never built, which is not at all true. They're just underneath that icon. And so it's that whole extra second to click on the icon to see our status. We've come up with some creative ways of working around this. One of our guys built a grease monkey script to hit the REST API and toss all the rows under the screen. That works for him and people who use Chrome, or Firefox, I suppose. And I'm working on a wallboard project right now to accomplish roughly the same thing so the whole team can see status. So we've got ways around this. So we think we are successful, and I appreciate that everyone has sat there mostly still for the last 27 and a half minutes. Here's what I hope that you got out of this. For product release branching, git-flow is great. We're happy as a team. Certainly we're striving for continuing to improve our process and make ourselves more efficient. We've been debating whether or not we actually want to use hotfixes. The team likes to have one thing to do to fix something that's out in prod, and we might do support branches for everything. It's one of those 50-50 sorts of decisions for us. So we're thinking about that. And we're able to react quickly when priorities shift, which is like 10 times a day. Maven, tough adversary, but it can be convinced to be an ally. There's a great community out there of plugin and extension developers, so please don't be discouraged by its complexity or Dobby hitting his head against a dresser. And regardless of your branching models, the tools work really well together. We couldn't be happier with how seamlessly we're able to use Jira to just start and work on things, and then all the other tools to view status, do code review, get alerts, etc. I want my team to be happy, and for the most part, this transition left them excited. I had one developer who's a pretty tough nut to crack, and we actually moved his stuff after we moved the rest of the team. He uses a slightly different set of tools. And right before the trip, I said, oh yeah, so how do you like Git? And he said, this was the greatest change that's ever been made since I started at Nuance. And that was incredible for me to hear. Great feedback from the team. They're happy, and so we hope that because they're happy, we can continue to build good software and keep them that way. So thank you very much for your attention. There are 46 seconds left, so I can probably take one question if anyone has one, and otherwise, if you've been putting them into the app, I will answer everything that gets posted there, or you can buy me a beer later, or I can buy you a beer later, or I'll be out there.
So actually, since he gave you such awesome content, we are unable to do Q&A, but I will have him respond to questions, as well as Atlassian.com/Git is our Git microsite, and Matt just is awesome and took the liberty of writing a 3-article series on how they did this in detail. So please check it out there if you want a quick reference. Also, the slides will be up at summit.atlassian.com within, I'm hearing hopefully by the end of the day, but don't quote me on that. And I'm saying this over a microphone in front of a lot of people, so.
They stopped recording, it's okay.
But otherwise, give it up for Matt. It was an awesome talk.
Thanks.
And guys, you have about a 15-minute break here at 2. We're actually going to have